Okay, I think before I begin, besides the Office of Congressional Ethics relationship that I have that I should probably disclose as in an effort at full disclosure, I am also on the board of the Center for Campaign Competitive Politics, which is on the deregulatory side of the reform debate, and so they are involved in suits. I am happy to say that I have not done any work on any of their lawsuits that they've been involved with, but nevertheless, because I am affiliated with them, I wanted you to know that affiliation. Now, how should we think about the court and campaign finance? The main problem today is the problem of scope. But it's a big problem. I mean, there's no question anymore about, does Congress have the authority to regulate primaries, which was a dispute for quite a while. Do states have plenary power when it comes to election rules? That was a dispute for a while. Problem today is, okay, conceding that the federal government has broad latitude to regulate a variety of interactions, what's the appropriate scope? Now, a chronic problem in campaign finance has been how to accommodate independent, non-coordinated political activity with the regulation of corruption. Now, Trevor has rightly pointed out just now that what we call common sense coordination may not be what legally right now they're wrangling with at 10th and E Street, which is where the FEC is. But let's just talk about common sense coordination for a while as I take this sort of big picture view of the challenge. It's been a debate since the Antisaloon League and its temperance program swept the nation. What kinds of groups are pernicious kinds of groups that we ought to regulate in politics? Then the Antisaloon League said it need not comply with restrictions on political committees because it was involved in public education, not politics. Because it was involved with temperance, not the presidency. Well, I submit to you that the people who supported the Al Smith campaign had little distinction over whether or not temperance was a huge issue. It was. It was the social issue of the day. I know it's hard now in the 21st century to really take the notion of alcohol in society as seriously as they did, but it was the abortion issue of the day. It was the gun issue of the day. It was the everything issue of the day wrapped up in one. It had tremendous ethnic components to it, it had tremendous political components to it, and it had a lot of money on both sides. So, the Antisaloon League, what about it? It had a very political program. It had a political program at the state and local level as well as the federal level. It was involved in campaigns. Happily, allocation questions, which the campaign finance lawyers in the room will go, oh God, allocation. Allocation questions were still a force in the future. We didn't know that word yet. But the fact remains that, just days ago, it could have been the Antisaloon League, instead of Emily's List, arguing before the D.C. Circuit that certain of its activities were not federal and thus not susceptible to federal regulation. Both cases would demonstrate the truth that it's eluded many, including Justice Colarcatelli, that regulating the manner in which you fund political communication limits that speech. It obviously does. So, the fundamental issue now is, how do we get at not candidates, not campaign workers, but these other entities out there who want to talk about issues, that are relevant in campaigns, like temperance or abortion, and do a blend of things in politics. In Speech Now, what we're talking about is a group that wants to make contributions in politics, that is, direct money to candidates, but, just wants to make independent expenditures in politics. You're nodding, I know. See, this is the problem, is that I write my handwriting, and then I try and read it again, and it's like, and I need reading glasses, too, because I'm getting that age. In Speech Now, what we've got is a group that wants to get together, a group of individuals, and group their resources and make independent expenditures about campaigns. Now, the fact is, right now, under the law, an individual can do that. But once you get together with another individual, potentially you become a political committee, and you're subject to a $5,000 per year contribution limit into your aggregate effort. Now, one of the problems with scope in federal campaign finance is, why is it that 2 people are treated so dramatically differently than 1 person acting alone, or 3 rather than 1, or 100 rather than 1? I mean, it's the number, as long as it's more than 1, doesn't matter as far as the law is concerned. In Citizens United, should we care about independent corporate spending and the sources of that independent spending when the communication is something that's pulled by the viewer rather than pushed? I think that's analogous to the situation we had with the internet regulation in 2004 at the FEC, and I think you can think about these 2 cases as being somewhat congruent. In the internet regulation debate, what we were worried about was, people getting messages that they wanted to get, like, pulling a book down from a bookshelf. You want to read the book, you know the book you want to read, you pull it down. Is there something about that communication that needs to be regulated when it's something you want to hear? Same thing as accessing a web page, same thing as this, satellite delivery system for the Citizens United movie about Hillary Clinton. Closer to candidates, but not entirely there yet, as we're going along this continuum, is the RNC case, a national political committee whose sole purpose in life is electing people to office. Those people would be candidates, and thus, ultimately, office holders. Should the federal government be able to restrict how that entity funds activity that is part of its political purpose, but not all about electing those candidates? It's about redistricting, which is indirectly related to elected candidates, but not the same thing. Supporting state candidates that are your farm team for your federal campaign. How far does Congress's regulatory authority reach into the inner workings of the RNC? And then finally, Emily's list, which the other speakers didn't refer to explicitly, but I think falls in this continuum. This is a political committee that is registered, reporting under the Act, doing all these wonderful things, with a non-federal component to it, sort of attached on the side, and how that entity has to account for money it raises, and how it has to allocate money between its federal and non-federal account for mixed activities. Now, my predictions with the court now, and the way I could make this coherent, and I could make the court's potential record here coherent, is to suggest that the court might look at these campaign finance cases related to how sort of closely they relate to candidates who then become office holders, who then are the actors that are in the position of engaging in quid pro quo corruption. So the further you are away from the candidate, the more attenuated your connection with that person in their office, the harder it is to justify Congress regulating your financial activity. So it would seem to me that Citizens United and Speech Now are in relatively stronger positions because they are these independent entities outside of the candidates. There's a nice symmetry in the Citizens United case. Citizens United was the source of a complaint to the FEC in 2004 that Michael Moore's movie Fahrenheit 9/11 and its ads were political spots. It did not prevail on that case, and subsequently, I think, decided that what was good for Michael Moore was good for David Bossie as well, David Bossie being the principal at Citizens United. Now, I guess in closing, it seems to me that we shouldn't think about groups as anything distinct from individual activity, just individuals working together. In my view, that rubric applies equally well to corporations and labor organizations as it does to ad hoc community organizations. The proffered reasons for the corporation and labor organization expenditure ban, not so much the contribution ban, but the expenditure ban, I think are nonsense. I think we need to refocus our concern about regulating corruption not on the individuals and groups out there that are trying to participate in politics, but on the real vehicles of corruption, which are the office holders that hold the reins. So ask yourselves, and this is my closing thought to you, as passionate reformers, how much of what you dislike about political funding is a problem of incumbency rather than a problem of money?